and 2026 look ahead. So I think we can open up for questions.
And then up straight to questions.
Obviously, a big piece this offseason is the future of one of your DPs and Jonathan Rodriguez. Can you sort of assess his future with the club and what that means for the DP model that you have going at current?
Yeah, so obviously, we went through a difficult situation, and really feel for Jonathan because he's the ultimate competitor. But last season, obviously, we were made aware that he was going to have a significant knee surgery, which he underwent, I believe, in July. That timeline is estimated probably somewhere around 12 months. That could be a bit shorter. That could be a bit longer. But as you can imagine, that takes us all the way into, the summer of next season. It's a big reason why we stayed aggressive in the summertime and went to look, and adding another high profile attacking player who could be dangerous and score goals in Christopher Velda, because we didn't want the roster to also have to suffer in losing such a key and important player for the team. So we've been supportive of Jonathan and his recovery and continue to do so. Jonathan will continue that as he is under contract for next season. But for the time being, we'll have the ability to sort of wait and make a decision on Jonathan specifically. In terms of the roster model, at this moment in time, we're trending very much towards a 2DP and 4U22 model. But we do have some flexibility to look at both scenarios as we did this past season.
How do you assess David DaCosta's season, and what sort of injuries was he playing with during the second half of this year?
Yeah, good question. In a lot of ways, I would assess his season, similar to how I would probably assess the overall team season in some ways. I thought David came in. We got him, obviously late in preseason. I thought he had a good influence early on the group. I thought he had an impact, obviously, which led to him, being named an all-star, in the early part of the season, and really, going into Leagues Cup, where he scored a goal and then he had suffered an injury in that game. That injury to his shoulder continued to occur throughout the rest of the regular season. He has an issue with a shoulder that seems to pop out quite often, which can be extremely painful. And we've got to go through a process of trying to calm that down over the matter of a couple of days and having to play through pain and a little bit of the worry that it's going to happen again. So we've had to have a surgery in place, sort of wait for the end of the season to happen. David is going to go and do that back in Europe. We have that scheduled with him, and that surgery most likely will take place next week. So hopefully he will recover. Thought process and goal is hopefully that sometime around the beginning of next season, he's available for us.
Hi, Ned. Good morning.
Hi.
Are you sticking with Phil Neville? And if so, what did you see this season that made you say this is our guy?
Yep. Confident in Phil. No questions there whatsoever. No wavering from me. Phil's a great leader. Phil's the right person to lead this team right now. And look, I think, I go back to a little bit of just sort of assessing the season, the overall performance of the team. And it's a long season. There's a lot of different competitions as well, right? In the beginning of August, coming out of Leagues Cup, coming off the Club America game, and I know we didn't advance in that tournament, but performing like one of the better MLS teams in that tournament, how we'd been playing, in the MLS season, looking at some of the additions, that we made to the group in the summer. Honestly, I was about the most bullish I've been about where the team was and where the club was over the last 4 or 5 years. And then we have to be honest, we have to reflect and look at that last stretch of games and 10 games, and getting into the playoffs and competing, but not advancing further. I think we fell short on results for a lot of different reasons. I don't think that there's just one specific answer to that. But ultimately the results fell short, and we started to drift and trend, downwards. And so I look at those things, and obviously I think that has a tendency to have a little bit of mixed feelings of how you felt the season went overall. But look, with Phil, myself, we have alignment. There's this continued challenge for our club that we want to and should be and need to be a team that's higher in the conference, a top team in the conference, competing more consistently and further in the playoffs, and really feeling confident that, we're ultimately competing for trophies. That's the goal, without question. Easier said than done. We know that in an ultra competitive league. And that will be very much the theme this offseason. We want to talk about those top teams. We want to compare ourselves to those top teams. How are we going to get there and how are we going to do that? There's a lot of work to be done, and that's already started.
David Ajala and Finn Sermon, two of the pillars of the team over this past season. Just what has their offseason looked like so far, with Ajala having a contract expiring but with an option, and Finn Sermon potentially in line for a raise with so many European teams circling him?
Yeah, I think that there's some real building blocks within the team, and you have to try to take some positives. The season's always going to end at some point, right? You lose a game the way that we did in the last game, in the third game against San Diego, right? We lost a game in a different way last season as well. And so you're always sort of left with what you remember last, right? And it leaves a little bit of bad taste in your mouth. It's difficult for that turnaround, but you got to get it out of your system quickly, and you have to move forward. And you also have to find the positives within the team, and we've got some young players. Center back's a position that we've been trying to find kind of that top level guy for years. We've had some good center backs that have played important roles, still have those. But talk about a young kid in Finn Sermon who has just completely stepped up. He never seems to really put a foot wrong. We have a top player in Finn. We've had conversations with Finn and his representation over the last couple of months about trying to put a new contract in place. First and foremost, he deserves that. He does deserve a raise, and we would like to keep him here long term. We do have control of the contract now for the next 2 years, but certainly we're very open to exploring those things with Finn and his agents, as he's very much earned that. With David, look, we've had a young player here at the club for a while. I'm really happy to finally see him healthy and performing at a top level. He's an incredible player. I've said this before. He has so much to his game, and he's so important to what we do. He does have an option for next season, which we'll exercise. And we've been speaking to his representation, about trying to extend that out. But David's also a player that has big ambitions as well. And he does have a market in other clubs back in Argentina and elsewhere, that have been interested in him also. So it's a goal of ours to try and accomplish that. We'll continue to chip away and work on it as well, amongst some of the other contract, situations that we have.
Morning, Ed.
Hi.
With Phil Neville going into his third season, I'm curious, how would you grade yourself since Phil has been here? Do you feel like you've made enough business moves outside the club and around it to kind of continue to put this team on the right path and continue to lead this football club?
Yeah. And first, look, I always put all the reflection and self-critique, I always put that on myself first and foremost, every single day. That hasn't changed since I've been 10 years old, and I'll continue to do that. I think that we've made strides and we've made some progress in certain areas. I do think there's a lot that's going well, and we are showing that progress. But as I said, this is a club that has expectations, and we want to have high standards. We want to be a team that's finishing towards that top conference and being talked about as being one of the better teams in the league. And so that's been the continued struggle for us to try and get there. And at times, maybe there's longer stretches where it feels like we're going to, and then maybe we don't, when you look at the season then. But I trust in myself. I trust in my ability to lead and obviously lead this club as well. I think when you look at some of what we've done and how we've evolved as a club, some of how we've built it as well in terms of some of the young players that we've brought in, bringing these players along. This past season, I look at some of the challenges because Phil's also faced with challenges as well, but we've done $20 million in player sales, but still, kept the team together. That's been competitive and at times exciting to watch on the field. So results are most important in this business. We want to win championships. We want to win trophies. That comes first and foremost. But I trust in my ability to continue to help lead this club and try to better position us to do so.
When you look at the season from like a wide lens, it's kind of like beginning of the season was pretty good, end of the season wasn't so much. How do you weigh those two facts when you evaluate what you need to do in the off season, whether it's transfers or overall strategy?
Yeah. I said it, I think coming out of Leagues Cup in the beginning of August, right? I mean, there was all the positivity that was there with everything that had been accomplished and how we were performing. And don't really look at the stretch that we had at the end of the season like we were playing that poorly along the way. I don't think we were playing that much differently than maybe we had. For me, it's always sometimes a perfect storm of different things that come together. I think you look a little bit at maybe some of the injuries that we had. I think you look a little bit sometimes maybe some of the inconsistencies we've had with how we approach games, and that's new players you're trying to integrate quickly into the team. When you don't have a longer preseason, some players started to step up and actually play well. So now you've got questions on, which player should ultimately be in the lineup. Played better competition down the stretch, ultimately as well, right? And there comes a time when teams need to win games, and we didn't win enough in that stretch to better position ourselves in the table. And then at times in the playoffs, I thought we competed obviously very well, but then obviously we fell short. And I think when you look at it, and if we're overly critical because we have to be, right? We're talking about those top teams in the conference, and we've fallen short of that. And so everything that we speak about this offseason, everything that we look at doing, it has to be with that mindset that this is how a top team operates. This is what it takes to be elite. So look at that in terms of roster acquisitions. We'll look at that in terms of the way that we play. We'll look at a number of different things. That's already begun. Like I said, Phil and I will be aligned on those things. And ultimately, hopefully that continues to push us forward.
You can go back to this day a year ago, and that was kind of a tumultuous one coming off of that loss and the whole DP situation. Here, you guys had a taxing year with getting out of the Evander thing, and then Santi's injury and not Santi leaving and Jonathan's injury. There were a lot of ups and downs, but you guys closed this season with what seems to be a DP that you guys can really build behind, and Christopher, and you saw his Instagram post game, and I know it's not the same thing, but it's a guy who looks like he wants to be here in Portland. How confident are you guys in him and kind of like building the next year or two kind of around him as the face of this attack and this club?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you spoke a little bit about last season and how that felt, and losing that game and then going into the next season. Then we're here and we've lost a series, but we've lost a game in convincing fashion. In the third game against San Diego, we have to be honest about that as well. But for me, it's very different, extremely different in that, and even just in how we lost the games. But Christopher's a player we identified, obviously, as I said. We wouldn't have known that was going to be a need until we understood that Jonathan wasn't going to be with us for a long period of time, and the team and the roster and Phil needed another DP acquisition to really inject life into the attacking third, and Christopher does just that. And even in the first 6-8 games where he was extremely dangerous and the goals didn't seem to come, for me it was very promising to know that it was going to come for him. So I think I'm really excited about him. I mean, coming off of our meeting, that we had with him at the end of the year, he's all in. He's a guy and a personality that we felt like the team lacked in a lot of ways. And so we need him to step up at the beginning of next preseason as well, take more ownership over the team, more leadership. We've got a group of players that need to do that. And I think the more and more that Christopher settles in this league, he's going to be extremely successful. So we've got big hopes around him, and we're going to put big responsibilities on him as well.
Just taking a brief tangent to take a look at the academy setup and T2. Sawyer Jura, he's joining the first team next year as his contract kicks in. He becomes a senior member of the squad, and also other T2 contributors like Gage Guerra scoring a very important goal. Just how do you see the academy over the past couple of years, and are there any, players to keep an eye on for potential first team impacts either next year or in 2 years' time?
Yeah, well, look, in this area, I give a ton of credit to other staff because for me, I just think it's been the collaboration, and more connectivity between the different layers that have started to lead to a real pathway and understanding as to why we're going to give certain players, those opportunities. And so there's always a number of players that are training, regularly with the first team that others, fans may not hear about, right? And Sawyer's obviously someone that we've had a plan in place for the last couple of years. We wanted that player to get, X amount of games at an MLS Next Pro level. He will join the first team next year. We've got other players that have played significant minutes and have done really, really well in the next pro level. You know, look at guys like Noah Santos, Eric Izota, who's another one that's had a great season with the next pro team. And so really, I think that starts immediately in the beginning of the year, because as we go into a first team preseason, we'll look to include 4 or 5 of those players. And as those players potentially take, you know, and grasp those opportunities and make the most of them, they put themselves in a real position in consideration to potentially become a first team player. We know it's a big jump. It's obviously a lot for a young player. But I think the more that we've continued to do that, I think that we're starting to find, you know, slow results within some of the players from both our academy and the next pro team. We need that. The first team roster needs that to find players and bring those players along. It's a big help.
Obviously, a lot of other contract options with this club right now. Can you give us a little bit of detail? You mentioned Ashala, but someone like Felipe Mora, James Pantemis, Christian Paredes, Gage Guetta, Diego Chara, that lot all sort of have as have options eligible. Do you have any updates on if the team has picked those up?
Yep. So we will probably be making, I think, our roster status for 26 public in the next day or two. But I believe player options that have been declined. Christian Paredes' option was declined. Christian's been in the club for 8 seasons. Was almost shocked to see that. He's been one of the best professionals I've ever been around. Complete team player. He's played a big role for us. We felt like, and I think Christian agrees as well mutually, it was the right time for him to go and find a different opportunity. So we've declined Christian's option, and then we've declined the options of both Felipe Carballo, who's currently injured. But I would say that we will stay connected with him, and we will explore what a potential future could look like there. And Matias Rojas, who was with us short term this year, at times played a big role for us and had an impact, but did struggle with some injuries as well. We've got some players that are out of contract, free agents. You know, Dario Zuprich is a free agent. We'll continue to have conversations there with him. Eric Miller, same. Hunter Solte, who's a young goalkeeper. But we're hopefully in the process of finalizing a new contract for Hunter, because we've got big plans for him and having him back next season with us as well. Max Crepeau is a free agent, but have not had conversations to retain Max within the group. Quickly rattling through some of the options. Diego Char had an option exercised. James Pantemis had an option that was exercised. Felipe Mora, the same. I believe I've probably covered most of the group within that, but that roster announcement will be coming out in the next day or so.
We will wrap up. One last question. Tyson, one last question. Yeah.
Just how did you view Diego's season, kind of with a evolving and changing role, and what do you kind of expect from him next year?
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw a little bit of it last season as well. And I've been at the club now for a long time, where there was almost like this fear of when Diego wasn't going to be available or wasn't going to play. Like, how was the team, you know, potentially going to operate, or how are we going to win games? The emergence of David Ayala last season was a big step for us as a club, you know, to know that, okay, we've got another really good player, you know, another good young player. So that Diego maybe doesn't have to be relied on every single game. This season was interesting because Diego at times, you know, wasn't playing as often or as regularly through different parts of the season. And really, I felt like upped his game at another level towards the end of the season when we really needed him most and needed to lean on that experience. And so he played a big role at that time. I think going into next season, we have to continue on that path to make sure we're putting Diego in the best position to succeed and play an important role, but play an important role at the right times as well. So there's a constant management there from Phil with Diego, but still showing that he's capable of doing it as well. And we've had good conversations, you know, just throughout the year with Diego and heading into next year as well.
Okay, we will wrap it there. Thanks for the time, Ned. We will have head coach Phil Neville up
Thanks.
next.
Thank you.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped.